Welcome to the Through the Lens of Learning podcast. If we haven't met, hello, I'm your host, Dr. Tracy Schroyer. I'll give you 2 words that summarize me to a T: lifelong learner. Join me as I share a bit about my own journey of curiosity, learning, and wonder. You'll also get to hear from some phenomenal individuals on what they're curious about learning and what they have to share too. Are you itching with excitement yet? I am, so let's get started. Welcome back to our next episode of Through the Lens of Learning. And today I have special guest Anna Leach with me. So thank you, Anna, for being a guest on the podcast. So Anna, can we start out a little bit and can you share some about yourself?
Sure. Currently, I'm a PhD student. I'm actually a PhD candidate at the University of Arizona at the School of Information, otherwise known as the iSchool. I'm studying how students or learners interact online. More about that, I'm sure, later. And I have a background as a data analyst for about 14 years before I shifted into this pursuit of a master's and now a PhD.
Awesome. And Anna, before we jump into some of your PhD journey a little bit more, can you tell our audience, what does learning mean to you?
So I think that's a very tough question because to me, I perceive learning for each individual as different, their own perception of it. For myself, I see it as just that never-ending curiosity and the humility to understand that you really don't know everything and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, perfect. I love it.
Awesome.
So on this episode, we are going to jump into your decision to go into your PhD work and what you're doing. So how long have you been in your PhD program right now?
I started in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to get this crazy idea to do this?
Oh boy. Well, I think I've been crazy from go. So the longer story is I always wanted to get a PhD because I would be the first in my family to get well, I wasn't the first to get an undergrad. My parents don't have it, but my grandparents did. But I was the first to pursue any graduate work from my line of family. And in my head, somebody plugged in a belief, or I picked up a belief that success or proof of intelligence was with that PhD. So when I finished my undergrad, my intention was to go straight to graduate school, but I struggled in undergrad. I didn't have the grades. I'm not a great test taker. I'm a deep thinker. I'm a critical thinker. I'm a researcher and an explorer, but on paper, I am not. I just am not. So I started working. And as I was working, I kind of saw all the rejection from graduate schools as a blessing in disguise. Of course, 10 years later. But as I was working, I continued to take classes and explore ideas of what I was really interested in. So in taking those classes and in that effort of exploring the career avenue versus the education avenue, I had an opportunity to train people, faculty and staff, on a new system that the university I was working for was switching to. So it was my job to collect data, analyze data, and create reports, and then in turn train these people. And you will love this. The first training, 8 hours in person, and death by PowerPoint.
Butts and seats, bored to death.
And I was like, why aren't they getting this? I don't understand why they have so many questions. I gave them all the answers in the PowerPoint. What's the problem? Well, my boss and I, and my team, we sat together trying to figure this out. We were very fortunate to have some consultants come from the other company that were instructional designers that knew how to put the content together that it could be consumed properly. And in that effort I found that excitement again. I found that, oh, this is really interesting to me kind of drive. From there, it just so happened that a master's program at that university in learning technology was developed, and it came across my desk for approval because I was part of that system, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is maybe a little perfect. Thank you, universe. I'm listening. And I didn't apply right away. I did a different pursuit. I went and talked to the faculty, to the program managers about that program. And then we had like a life shift change. My husband was offered a job in Tucson, Arizona. And I said, if we're going to do this, let's do this right. Right? We have this opportunity. If we can move and still support our lifestyle and I can go back to school, let's do it. So it was a bit of a mismatch, but the idea that this Master of Learning Technology and the even desire to go into it wasn't my initial thought. I thought I wanted to go into women and gender studies, but
Okay.
because in my career, I was exposed to this idea of learning and training and had that ignition of curiosity again.
Mhm.
I couldn't let it go. However, the research aspect, while I was taking the master's, I was learning a lot of applicable information. I
Mhm.
went to conferences. I met some fantastic people who shared with me their lives and their journeys and what they're doing. And all the while, I loved it. But the research, the why, the question, what would be better, it never went away. And that's what led to the PhD program. I initially explored college of education, going at it from a pedagogical standpoint. But what I found is that my data analytical background wouldn't leave me be. And I really wanted to look at it from more of a big data and how we as human beings interact with the information. So that's what led me to the School of Information. Their mantra, their mission is understanding the intersection of information, technology, and people.
Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah, that right, right.
Yeah.
So that's where I found my home.
Okay. And what is your PhD in
Yeah. So
specifically?
this is an interesting title for the PhD is in information, right?
Okay.
That's what it's called, a PhD in information. And I get that look like, what are you,
That's very, very general.
right? My dad, my dad, he's like, okay, so does that mean you just know everything? No, Dad. So what that actually means is the School of Information is all about what I just said, that intersection of people, technology, and information, big data points, how we interact with it, how the technology that we use collects that information and data, and then how the people use it, interpret it, work with it. It's in the School of Social and Behavioral Sciences, so it really looks at that human aspect. My PhD has a minor in teaching, learning, and sociocultural studies because I'm interested in how we as learners, students, curious people, use educational tools to improve, um, I guess, our gain of knowledge and how we interact with it and what our patterns are and that kind of thing. So my PhD is in the School of Information, minor in teaching and learning and sociocultural studies, which feels like a big umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were going through your coursework, was
Hmm.
there one or two courses that stood out specifically where you were like, I am where I'm supposed to be?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is for me.
Yes, that is for sure. So I took a class in digital traces, and it was a graduate seminar. It's part of the required core coursework. But the idea of the course was not only the content, but the way it was taught. So the faculty member who's also on my committee approached it with the idea that I want you to come with a proposal in mind, an idea of the data you want to search for. I will teach you how to gather that data. We'll talk about the fundamental like core concepts and that kind of thing. We will also look at big deal articles that are written about this. And we will tailor this to something that keeps you interested while learning a skill and also learning more knowledge about the broader piece. I really enjoyed that class, and it is fed a lot into my dissertation as far as the direction of the data methods that I'm using.
Well, even
Um,
having that professor in you said they're in your committee, right?
yeah, right,
That's
right. I
good.
actually took two courses from this professor because of the way that they teach and just approach me as a student. I
Mhm.
never felt like I wasn't smart enough when I work with him. So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
The other class that I took was more the content drove me. It's in social network analysis.
Oh,
Yeah, I took the class in the last year of coursework. It was last spring or last fall. Forgive me, I don't even know what year it is. So
it all runs together.
So I took it with this professor who teaches social network analysis, and the reading list that they provided was 14 pages long. And at first I was like, I'm completely overwhelmed. But then once we started digesting and digging into the content, having that extra piece of material so that I could keep looking, um, again, ignited curiosity, because I just couldn't stop consuming, trying to understand how this would work. Um, and now I included this in my dissertation work, or I am including this in my dissertation work, because the idea, if you know what a social network image looks like, those bunches of bubbles that are connected by lines, the idea of trying to visually demonstrate what the data are trying to tell you, love it. Just love it. Yeah.
So I know a little bit more about what your dissertation is about, but when did you realize, or when did the pieces start to fall together? Like, I can tell you, when I went into my PhD program, I had a good working knowledge of what I wanted to do in my dissertation, like before I applied and started. A lot of people don't until they get further along. When did
Right.
those pieces start to connect and you were like, this is it, like this is what I want to do?
So I don't know what everybody's journey is, but I can share mine. When I applied, I said I want to work with learners and how they use tools to learn, right? So it was very vague and unsure. As I continued to take classes that first year, I felt like a fish out of water. Part of that problem, I can say now, because it was years ago, was imposter syndrome. I kept waiting, literally waiting for somebody to call me and say, "Oh, we're just kidding. We didn't need to offer you to come to this university. It was a serious mistake.
You have no idea what you're talking about."
Here's some cookies and a gift basket." So, you know,
Thanks for trying.
what I was waiting for. So I spent most of that time just trying to be the ideal student instead of really focusing on what I was interested in, and would continue to drive my curiosity. It was the next year when I knew that the comprehensive exams were coming, that I really, in conjunction with the types of classes that I was taking, it was less the core required classes and more classes that I was interested in. And I took an independent study with a brilliant professor, again, another person on my committee. And that person really helped me to think about more critically what I was interested in, while simultaneously reassuring me that my ideas didn't have to solve the world's troubles, that this was a starting place, and that in 5 years I'll look at my dissertation lovingly as the first attempt at making a cake, right? It's not going to be a beautiful masterpiece. It's going to be a work in progress that I'll continue to mold. And when I trusted that, and I trusted that person, and I trusted that the process was going to work out, that's when I started to have more belief in myself that I could do this. And then again, like this whole story, it sounds like the universe kind of puts everything, and I just have to listen. We had I had taken a class that I really didn't like at all. I didn't like the content. I didn't like the way it was taught. I didn't like the people around me. It was very weird. And from that, I started to think about not just the educational tools that we have to use to learn, not just about the pedagogy and how we teach it, but how the human being itself has such an impact on whether or not that person wants to participate in the class. So I myself am sitting there in a class about human-computer interaction. I'm not getting the materials or enjoying it. I'm not enjoying the classroom. So I'm not really motivated in it. And I reflected on that as well. So there were a lot of influences in the journey. The pandemic also played a role in changing how I was looking at my focus and what I wanted to examine. The pandemic kind of smacked me in the face like a frying pan, because it made what I'm working on so important, or it made it feel so important.
Yeah.
Because instead it wasn't like, oh, online, the old adage that people have said is that online learning is just a convenient way and it's not good deep learning. And then when we were forced to emergent learning, I said, well, it doesn't matter if you think that, because we need to reapproach it. We need to rethink it. And if I can help bring some knowledge to that topic, then so be it, kind of thing.
Right. So tell us, if you can, in simple terms, so people understand.
I can't.
What is your dissertation about? Like, what
Yes.
did you start
Okay.
looking at?
Okay, so what I'm trying to understand is how an online asynchronous class that is around coding. So this specifically class is on Python. This isn't a soft skill or a history. It's a skill like coding Python. How students interact with each other, with the instructor, and with the content, but not just those three. My brain just went blank. Moore's interactions. Um, I really want to see what patterns emerge. Are there specific or are there special ways that students will interact? Are there different, are there social interactions that are involved with that? And then what do these interaction patterns reveal about those social interactions? To do this, I felt like, again, initially, when I was thinking about my dissertation data, it was completely quantitative. I was just going to gather data from the D2L database, as well as the informal messaging system that this class is using. And I was going to do a social network analysis, like what does this look like? Where are they interacting and who are they interacting with? But then realizing how important that human element is, and then having discussions with some qualitative researchers, I decided to add that student voice in as well as that instructor voice. So I interviewed students and I interviewed the faculty to see what else I could learn about those interaction patterns, and what they may or may not mean.
So when you talk about social interactions, so I know discussion boards are one thing that are popular with online classes. What other types of interactions were you capturing?
Yeah, so not just the discussion boards, which is an interesting conversation that I am excited to think about. But also, they're using an informal messaging system. This is something that happened after the pandemic. And I believe this is absolutely informal, but just talking to other faculty and TAs in my program, the use of an informal messaging tool started with the pandemic and continued. How those social interactions can make a student feel like they're connected to the classroom community when they're in an online asynchronous class, or may not make them feel connected or neutral about that. So I'm looking for ways that the students are feeling connected or trying to connect, or at least feel like they can connect if they want to, outside of just D2L.
Okay. And D2L is the platform that the course
Yeah,
is in. Is that right? Okay.
yeah.
So
Sorry.
informal messaging, would that be like a Slack maybe
Yes,
or
yeah,
Teams? Okay, something like
yeah,
that.
Slack.
Okay.
Slack, for this particular dissertation, it's Slack, but I'm also curious about Teams, Discord, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So how did you go about setting up your research? Like how did you decide that you're going to do a Python class? How did you figure out what class or class sections you would do, getting permissions, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that was a little bit of luck, and a little bit of who you know. So my office mate, again, pre-pandemic, is the instructor for the class that I selected. Excuse me. And I had asked several faculty members if I could use their class as a research platform. But after discussing it with my committee and going through the comprehensive exams, again, I think we all do this, or maybe I'm generalizing. We want all the data. We're like data
Give it
monster
all.
hoarders, right? Like, just give me all the data. And my advisor is a wonderful, brilliant human being who very firmly said, "You have enough data. You're going to interview people. You need one class. Could you just stop?" And I said, "Okay." Well, this one class had the largest population of students because I was worried about that response rate. I was worried about the participation rate. I was worried about the consent forms, whether or not students would be willing. So I wanted to go with the largest number. So it was a numbers game.
Okay. And this was all during the pandemic that you were gathering this data. So it wasn't the luxury of being in a room where they would sign a form for you. you had to depend on them getting that back to you
Yeah.
online, everything.
Now, fortunately, the person that is teaching the class is a fellow PhD student. So they were very much willing to encourage participation within the means of the institutional review board guidelines, obviously. But
Okay.
yeah, excuse me. So having that support of the advisor and the faculty who are willing to, how do I put it? Be honest, transparent, blunt with me has been very helpful.
Yes. And having a good advisor and a great committee is, I mean, that changes the whole game, because I remember hearing so many people that said that they had a bad advisor, that they had to drop out at one point, the advisor, and they had to go find somebody else. I mean, I remember interviewing people to try to figure out how can I get a good one to make sure that would work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm lucky on that aspect.
Yeah. So one question for you I'm thinking of, and now that I'm in learning strategy for our technology teams, you mentioned that you were looking at Python classes online. Well, Python is very technical, and the, I guess, assumption is that most technical people are not overly social.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think about that, or did that play into any of what you're looking at?
So I didn't think about that initially when I was looking at the class. It's actually coming out. Um, the aspect of it being a Python class and a skills-based class is coming out in the interviews. So what's really interesting to me is I obviously didn't collect data for 2 or 3 or 4 classes that are of different content or different content. So what I'm hearing from the students is I already know it, but it's a requirement, so I'm taking it, or I have my dad, a support team, somebody else to help me, so I don't need it, or I'm not reaching out until I need help. So it's not that they don't or aren't interested in that connection. It's they are finding it elsewhere. And even in the response to how I asked the students, where would you go for help if you were seeking help? They have different order of lists that they would go to, but it's not reaching out to another student is in the bottom of the list every time. They have close friends. They would go to Google. They would go to office hours, email the instructor, go to that informal messaging system and see if somebody else has already asked the question before they reach out to other people. I also, in the interviews, had one student say, well, I know that when I get to a job in coding, I'm going to have to work on my own. So I need to figure out ways to be self-supported. Excuse me. It's the yellow Palo Verde. It's
And your beautiful Arizona weather.
it's lovely. It's lovely today. Yes.
All right. So where are you right now in your journey to completing your dissertation?
Yes. So I collected all my data and finalized it. Right now, I am analyzing it. So I've gone through all of the interviews one time. I've gone through think alouds, which I did to try and get a different angle. I did retrospective think alouds, which means you ask the student to record themselves doing a task, and then you play that video back with them and ask them questions. Excuse me. So now I'm trying out, I've never done any type of qualitative coding before, except in a classroom environment. So this is, it's been a bit of an isolating but interesting and thought-provoking experience. Next up, I'm going to take that analysis and start writing. So that's my plan for the summer. Once I'm done teaching, which will be in about a week, I'll start diving into the writing process.
Okay. So as far as the dissertation goes, what's been your favorite part so far?
Oh, these beautiful like aha moments where you read something or like an article, or you hear somebody say something in an interview that makes sense to you. It finally makes a connection. What I find super interesting is when I sit in front of the desk, excuse me, when I sit in front of the desk and I'm kind of just isolated working, I don't really have this aha moment. It feels more like a process of analyzing. But then I'll go for a hike or a walk or whatever. I'll be driving in my car and there'll be this beautiful magical moment where I was like, oh, it sounds like this. And I will literally pull off the trail and start scribbling in my notebook this paragraph long of like, I didn't think about how this connects with this, with this, with this. And that feeling of having that light bulb, that ignition of curiosity or thoughts, I think that's my favorite part of doing the dissertation entirely.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what would you say has been one or two of the biggest challenges you've had so far in your PhD journey?
Yeah. There have been a lot of challenges. And I think I was telling you this a little bit before we started. When I first started into the pursuit of the graduate education, I thought it was just a matter of grit. You just persevere, right? You read more, you spend more time doing it, you get through it, you'll be fine. But what I'm learning is there's a lot more mental aspects of it, like emotional health, than I anticipated. I lose motivation, I get burnt out way often than I'd like to admit. You lose joy. You don't want to do it anymore. You just want it to be over. And it feels somewhat deflating at times. And then imposter syndrome like creeps in and self-doubt creeps in. And I think those are the times when I appreciate or lean into some of the tools in my toolkit a lot. So for me personally, whenever I'm feeling down, lost, losing hope, discouraged, a hike will just kind of refresh in my brain, or leaning into my support system, which I'm very blessed to have a huge support system that will help me out. Just taking 5 minutes to pet my dog or crochet a new project or anything like that has helped, but it's still challenging.
Yep.
And then that comparison trap is also very challenging because I'm in class with my cohort of other students, and I'll reveal, I have 2 children, I'm married, I have other things going on. I'm teaching to support the work, the PhD, and I like to live life a lot. So it makes it very hard to balance all of that and to get through that. Compounded by the fact that a lot of our family are back, in the Ohio area, so we don't have them to lean on all the time, and you miss them after a while. So we have to travel to see them. So I think that I compare myself to other graduate students who, they're able to focus a lot of time on their work because they don't have as many distractions. Now, I stopped comparing when I realized that just because they don't have the same distractions doesn't mean they have it easier.
Right.
Because that was my bias. That I learned as I got to know other people. And instead of me walking into the room like, well, I have the hardest and most busiest schedule, and I knocked myself down a couple pages, pegs, steps, whatever. When I thought about it, I was them at some point, and my life was just as busy, pre-children, pre-marriage, pre-dog, pre-whatever. And just because my perception is that they aren't as busy doesn't mean that's right. So that helps me with the comparison. And also knowing that this is my journey and I really want to enjoy it. I don't want to be stressed out and not enjoy it. I want to gobble up every minute. I have to remind myself of that very often. Yeah. Yep. Those are big challenges.
Well, that's interesting too, because it sounds like a lot of people that are in your cohort, maybe younger than you, not married, no kids, that kind of thing. When I went through mine, a lot of people in my cohort were getting ready to retire, or they were retired. So that's very interesting that you say that. And I had even thought for a while, it's like if they were retired, it was like, you have all the time in the world, like to do this and do whatever. But everybody has their own thing going on. And yeah, we have to stop the compare game.
Yeah. 100%.
So one thing that you did, and I can't remember how long ago you had put this out there, but on social media, you had mentioned struggling to like set milestones or deadlines or what you should focus on. And it sounded like from what you had posted, you brought your family in to kind of help you. And can you tell everybody what it is that you did that kind of helped you?
Yeah. So my little instructional designer heart wanted to have something that was interactive and engaging and fun for myself. But like I had said before, one of the biggest challenges is losing that motivation and getting burnt out. So a couple people had suggested from my cohort, they had suggested, well, just because you can't see the work getting done doesn't mean it's not getting done. And I kept saying, like, no, for me, if I don't literally print out a page and see that I have written 10 pages physically, then for me, it feels like a failure. Even spending 10 hours coding something that comes to nothing feels like a failure. And that repeated feeling of failure was disheartening and kept bringing me down. So my children and my husband and I, we were trying to like brainstorm different ways to do it. And we had a chore chart for them when they were younger. They're in their teens now, but when they were younger. And this kind of, again, light bulb went on. And I said, hey, what if we did one of those? They look like a thermometer and there's a bubble at the top. And I get to fill in a line, physically fill in a line for everything that I do. And we went through and tried to figure out what is the thing that we do, right? Is it going to be complete a task? Is it going to be work, do a page, do it? And I was at that point, like so disheartened that I said, how about if mommy just works for 1 hour? I get to fill in a line, like just 1 hour. And that felt like one of those SMART goals, right? It was realistic. I could do it in a certain time frame. It was achievable, all those things. So my daughter jumped on. She's very artistic, very crafty, and she drew the bubble, drew all the lines, which then I was like, well, now that motivates me because this is my accountability. She worked on it and she expects me to fill this in. My son checked it every day. So how many hours did you get done, Mom? Well, only one today, buddy. That's okay, Mom. Tomorrow's a new day. One step at a time. Like, just fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah. So then when I completed that, I got my reward, but I wanted to do it again. This time I wanted to challenge myself. Okay, let's complete tasks. So when I write out the tasks, I do it in a Google notebook, or excuse me, a Google Doc. Write down a task or a bunch of tasks, because sometimes you know how your brain will fill up with all these ideas, and then you've got 1,000 ideas and only 4 hours in the day, so you need to be realistic. So you write all those down. So now I'm looking at it over there. You can't see it. My task list is to do 50 tasks is a reward, and I have 10 bubbles, and I'm using up all the old stickers that I found when I cleaned out the the office supply cabinet in our house after the pandemic.
That is awesome. That's awesome. And
Yeah,
hopefully your family was cheering you on too, of kind of leaving you alone, letting you have your time to take, add to that chart, add to the hours and
well,
everything.
it's funny when they became involved with the work. There was a shift in understanding. Okay, mom needs this hour because they're home a lot, right? Now that they're back to school, it's a little easier, but we were all home. Husband was working upstairs and kids were working in the office with me. So any type of that deep thinking time was just not achievable, which is also frustrating and discouraging at times. But yeah, they held me accountable and then held themselves accountable. Mom needs a minute, mom needs an hour, kind of thing. So yeah.
All right. So, I love the fact that your family's involved, helping you to stay motivated and help you along the way. Um, if there is anybody who's listening who is going through their PhD or they're considering it, what feedback or advice might you give them?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about going back for your PhD or going for your PhD, I think a couple of the things that come to mind is make sure everybody's on board. Anybody else that you have to support financially, emotionally, that they're 100% on board and that they understand. Because my family is very supportive, but there are rough times when mom has to, a mom, wife, sister, whatever, has to remind everybody of the mental commitment and of the time and energy that goes into this. So that is a big thing to consider. I guess the other thing is, don't settle for any program, advisor, team that you don't love, because you don't deserve that. When you're ready to get your PhD, this is it sounds selfish, but it's about you. It's about the work you are interested in. It's the work that you want to contribute. It's the work that you're going to have to do. And sometimes you're going to have to do that on your own. There's a lot of isolated time in the PhD, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with the fact that I know I'm not an excellent writer. I'm getting better, damn it. But it's taking time, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
that has to go. You have to know that. And have an outlet. I learned a little bit ago, probably 2 years ago, that for me, getting outdoors and doing a hike or going to a boxing class are critical for my mental health. Being able to go and punch the snot out of something for an hour is critical to my mental health. And I didn't know that before I started the program, or even in that first and second year. There was a lot of discouragement, imposter syndrome, and self-doubt. A lot of, I don't know if, when, how I'm going to be able to do this. So finding those outlets, having that support system, and really understanding what you're getting into, and love it or don't do it.
Yeah, that's what I had heard. If you're not passionate about the topic and that you're going to be picking apart and researching, then it's going to be really hard because it can be a lonely, lonely journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
you're in your head a lot.
exactly, that being in your head and thinking like, I care a lot about this, but does anybody else care about it? It can kill that fire, that drive. That's
I like what you said earlier on too, and you had mentioned with your, I think it was your advisor or your committee had said that you're not solving everything.
Yeah.
It's like, take the piece, you're building that foundation from which to grow. And I can tell you with some of my graduate students, they were in the last 2 classes of their program, and they're actually putting out a survey, gathering the quantitative research and being able to do that. They're like, oh, but I wanted to do X, Y, and Z and not just X. And I had to come back and be like, you know what? If you are laying that foundation down, it's not out there, you're introducing something new and you're trying this, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I remember my advisor even telling me that too. You don't have to cure world hunger. It's like, what's this little piece that you can contribute and that you can work towards? So I love hearing that from you too.
Yeah. There's a video that I love doing this to people. There's a video out there that talks specifically about this, but I don't remember exactly who made it or what. But the visual is this giant bubble of knowledge, and then it zooms in on the surface of the bubble, and it's just like a little tiny pimple, and that's what the PhD program is doing. So understanding that you are just working on extending that little tiny bit of knowledge is crucial to well, it's not crucial. It's just what you do as a PhD student, but it's crucial to you not losing your mind. You can't know it all. The other thing that I was told right away, as soon as I started my comprehensive exams, was I want you to take your research questions or your focus statement or your topic statement, blow it up and print it out and put it on the wall. And I have it right there. And then I want you to, every time you get one of those like, ooh, we should look into moments, I want you to look at your topic and say that doesn't match, and put it in a Google Doc called things I'm going to look into after I'm a doctor.
I love that.
Yeah, it's been a critical way to stop me from going down this wild rabbit hole.
Oh my gosh, and there's so many from all the different information you're sifting through and that you're finding that you could definitely, I love that idea. Yep. All right. So Anna, before we get ready to close, anything else that maybe we didn't talk about related to the PhD journey that you wanted to share?
I would say that there are several books about the PhD journey that were very helpful to me, that I kind of wish I had read maybe my first year. And that one is Demystifying the Dissertation Writing, by Dr. Single, I think. Yeah. There's another one called The Dissertation Journey, and I can't remember the author's name right now. But both of those helped me in different ways. Like I said, I wish I would have read Dr. Singles in my first year of the PhD program, because I would have implemented some of those ideas right away. Whereas the dissertation journey was really fitting right as I was writing the dissertation proposal.
All right. So before we wrap up, Anna, can you share, if somebody wants to follow you, the work that you're doing, connect with you, how would you recommend that they do that?
I think that the best place to connect with me about this dissertation work, or any of the work that I'm doing, or my previous data analytics work, is on LinkedIn. I'm Anna Rose Leach on LinkedIn, and it should just be all mashed into one word.
All mashed together.
Yeah. Sorry. I think the internet froze, so I decided I would just stand still and pretend I was.
All right. Well, Anna, thank you again for being a guest on the podcast, and I appreciate you sharing the insights that you have about your PhD journey, and I'm so excited to hear about your next steps and being able to call you Dr. Leach. Well, thank you again, and that's a wrap until our next episode.
All right, sounds great.
This podcast is brought to you by Upskill University. You can find more information about how to become part of the Upskill community for free, this and other episodes of the Through the Lens of Learning podcast, and more on the website at www.upskilluniversity.com. Thanks again for listening, and have an awesome day.
This is fun. We have our own show. Do you want to put on a puppet show? Come on, let's put on a Gizmo puppet show. I am Gizmo. Gizmo is me. Hey, yeah. Today I'm going to teach you how to give a puppy cookies. Gizmo, you have to face the eyes. My name is Gizmo, and I like lots of cookies. I would like to have a cookie in the morning, a cookie at noon, playtime, and then a nap, And then another cookie. I'm annoyed with my mom right now because she's using me like a puppet. That's okay.
It died right as I plugged it in. I even came upstairs because I usually stay downstairs, and I'm like, okay, my laptop's all charged. Well, then I went to go get the plug from downstairs. And I had never plugged it into the wall today.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, okay. So good thing we can edit, right? This is just a
Right.
recording.